Welcome back to the most news in the morning. Right now, it's 53 minutes past the hour, and we're seeing live pictures from Oslo, Norway. You see the President, Barack Obama, there, along with the First Lady, Michelle Obama, greeting and shaking hands. We're just about 10 minutes away from this actual official start of the 2009 Nobel Peace Prize ceremony. White House correspondent Suzanne Melville also live in Oslo covering the ceremony. And we have with us Pentagon correspondent Barbara Starr in Afghanistan. That's where the President has ordered an escalation of the war ahead of accepting his Peace Prize. And joining us here in our studio, we're very, very glad to cover every big angle of the event with our CNN chief international correspondent, Christiane Amanpour, our senior political correspondent, Candy Crowley, and our senior political analyst, David Gergen. Thanks for being with us, everyone.
Yeah, it's quite a moment for President Obama. He is about to become a Nobel Peace Prize winner.
So we're hearing a little bit of the music again, and in a couple of minutes we expect to actually hear from the President, and we will bring you back there. But meantime, I'd like to get a little bit of insight from some of the people here on our panel today, including our Christiane Amanpour. From an international perspective as well, we've talked a lot about the domestic politics of this, the criticism, the questions about whether this was given too soon or, quote, what has he done to deserve it. When we talk about the stature that comes with the Peace Prize, how does that play out in accomplishing some of our international goals?
Well, I think very briefly, we've talked about security, we've talked about President Obama said this is not a popularity contest, I'm not trying to win some kind of beauty pageant. But I think people need to understand that being popular is not just a pageant, it's about creating more stability and security for the United States. It's actually in the U.S. national interest for the United States to be viewed favorably around the world. So that's one thing in terms of getting allies on board, in terms of being able to wield your policy overseas. I think picking up on what David said, the issue of moral stature, this is something that people are really looking closely at, because a lot of the current policy comes with a big P, pragmatism. And many are asking, what about the principle? Let's go to Iran, for instance. The president is being rewarded, according to the Nobel, for his policy of engaging now, rather than isolating, which is what happened in the previous 8 years. But in Iran, you have a whole different dynamic. You have a student movement, a popular movement that seeks to be recognized, their human rights seek to be recognized, and people consider that he has not really staked out a position on that yet, that he's too focused on trying to get the very, very important nuclear deal, but at the expense of some of the human rights and moral, democratic values issues. In Burma, he's done something different. He's sought to engage the military junta now of Burma. He's sent a special representative. But what has he got in return so far? Again, engagement, they hope, is better than isolation. But have they got anything? Did they get anything back from the junta in return for starting this engagement? In Sudan, there is a president who's indicted by the International Criminal Tribunal, their criminal court, and yet this President Obama has sent a special envoy to negotiate and engage with the Khartoum regime. So there's people still waiting to see how this is all going to play out. In China, he almost didn't bring up human rights, nor did his Secretary of State. The Dalai Lama is pretty angry about that. And so all around, this moral stature, this playing up American unique values and exceptionalism is yet not a main part of his policy.
Well, let's wait and see what he says. I think that's what the drama is about the speech. Does he use this as a pivot toward enlarging that agenda? Let's see what he says about it.
But at the same time, and you know, we talked about what the former National Security Advisor Zbigniew Brzezinski said about the Middle East, but also this idea that Mahmoud Abbas was looking for a lot of support from the president, particularly on the issue of settlements. The president did not support him on that, and many people are saying that he's just basically undercut Abbas, and this is not what they expect out of a Peace Prize winner.
Remembering back to the campaign when Hillary Clinton, during the primary, talked about then candidate Obama and said, you know, he's got a speech. This is there after all the beautiful. She had this famous line where she said, after all the beautiful words, the sky will open and wonderful things will happen. And this is where the president is. He has begun to implement this policy of extending a hand. People saying, come, you know, talk to us. You know, ungrasp your fist. You know, that sort of thing. We haven't seen what will happen yet. I mean, just in terms of foreign policy, and I think that's what you're also seeing in the U.S., not just in the world. Okay, once you've said to Iran, we want to engage, if they don't engage, then do we get our allies to come behind us and, you know, sanction? So I think you're talking to a man so early on that we haven't had time to see whether a new approach to foreign policy is going to work, other than in popularity polls in Europe.
David's about to jump out of the...
He can barely contain himself over there.
I think it's important to recognize that there has been a change in the atmosphere.
Popularity polls.
And speaking
No,
of
no,
that,
no, it's not
the
popular poll.
Chinese pianist Lang Lang has just finished his piece, and they're about to announce the president and present him with the medal. Let's listen in.
And now, I call upon the Nobel Peace Prize laureate for 2009, President Barack Obama, to come forward and receive the gold medal and the diploma.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, distinguished members of the Norwegian Nobel Committee, citizens of America, and citizens of the world. I receive this honor with deep gratitude and great humility. It's an award that speaks to our highest aspirations, that for all the cruelty and hardship of our world, we are not mere prisoners of fate. Our actions matter and can bend history in the direction of justice. Clear-eyed, we can understand that there will be war and still strive for peace. We can do that, for that is the story of human progress. That's the hope of all the world. And at this moment of challenge, that must be our work here on Earth. Thank you very much.
Standing ovation for American President Barack Obama as he accepts the Nobel Peace Prize for 2009.
Kieran, sorry, I'm having a difficult time hearing you, but a couple impressions I had from this speech. First, covering President Bush for 8 years. President Bush, obviously someone who his own presidency and legacy was defined by war, 9/11 really setting the agenda for him. It is very clear that for President Obama, he is a reluctant war president. He spent much of the speech talking about this idea of a just war, that there are some occasions when war is necessary for the sake of peace, but that still diplomacy and negotiations very important in reaching out to world leaders around him. So very much a contrast to President Bush. The other thing that I note as well is that President Obama has always been someone who has wanted to do big things on a big stage. And what we saw when he was first elected, he won back in Grant Park, and you watched him change. He really went from somebody who, when he won, and the expectations were very high, became very serious, very grounded, and very focused about the job ahead. There was no sense of a big party that was happening in Grant Park, that it was time to put his head down and get down to business. It's the very similar approach, very similar tone that you see today, that once again, you're talking about skyrocketed expectations of this president now on the world stage. And that is why the focus so much today on getting the work done, putting one foot in front of the next, acknowledging in a very humble way this award, but at the same time emphasizing that this is a community effort, a world effort, and that there's still so much work to be done, and that is the focus, Kieran.
All right, Suzanne Malveaux for us in Oslo, Norway. Thank you, Suzanne.
Let's turn once again to our political panel. CNN's chief international correspondent, Christiane Amanpour, is here, along with senior political correspondent